The Order 1886 is a frustrating game of almosts. Truly great elements peek out at the player from behind a curtain of uneven narrative and mediocre gameplay. The most disappointing parts came from those moments where I could see the potential squandered. The story almost pulls you in before leaving you dissatisfied. The world almost envelops you until you realize you are an unwelcome element in it. Copious QuickTime events leave you wanting more control until you actually get a gun in your hands. There is one thing that the Order most obviously gets right. Its visuals. From the first time I started up the game, I was struck by its detail and its beauty. Despite the high expectations set by its trailers, I was still impressed. Every environment is lovingly designed and rendered. The character models are expressive, which goes a long way to making them feel alive. The ornate grandeur of many set pieces lends a sense of scale and regality to the world. In one section of the game, where the player navigates through tunnels with a lantern, it uses the light engine to great effect, creating a simultaneous feeling of dread and curiosity. Similarly, the game has great sound design. I could tell that care had been put into how and when things would sound. From the subtle way that different surfaces sounded under my feet, to the background conversations that can barely be heard while walking around. I wore a headset while playing, and during one stealth section, I could tell where guards were approaching from by their footsteps and whispers before I ever saw them. At some points in that section, I would whirl around before realizing that I had simply heard a bicycle going by in the surrounding streets. Forcing me to differentiate guards from background noise made that sequence much more memorable. Unfortunately, the game does not always use its technical achievements to the fullest, with parts feeling more like a tech demo than a full game. Throughout, you are prompted to pick up surrounding items. The majority of these items tell you nothing and add nothing to the experience. Near the beginning of the game, I picked up a silver flask, which the game prompted me to rotate around. It told me nothing about the world and came across as nothing more than the developers showing off how nice the light reflecting off it looked. Pictures throughout the game look fantastic and impress me every time I pick them up, but once again they rarely added much to the game beyond looking nice. The story similarly starts out with a lot of potential before falling apart. The idea behind the Order is intriguing. King Arthur's Knights of the Round Table found the Holy Grail during his reign. Through the Grail, members of the Order receive healing abilities and longevity. When a knight dies, another takes his place and his name. The Order ostensibly fights half-breeds, descendants of pureblood werewolves and vampires, though in practice you spend hardly any of the game doing so. Unfortunately, this lore is not clearly communicated right off the bat. Even worse, it barely gets deeper than that summary. Ready at Dawn dangles unique lore in front of the player and then refuses to explore it. The steampunk reminiscent world is similarly barely explored. The game is at its best when it starts to show off its world and setting, but it spends an unfortunate amount of time not doing so. The storyline reflects this. It leaves most things unexplained. The pacing of the story feels off, with early levels drawn on and padded with longer, uninteresting fights. And then I was rushed through the second half of the game, leaving me little time to ponder its twists. The story jerks around awkwardly, and it takes the characters with it. With so little development, character motivations do not often shine through. The main character, Sir Galahad, changes his mind without earning it, and gets pulled around at the mercy of the plot. The pacing disconnected me even further from the story, leaving me bored at the wrong parts and uncaring at the worst parts. The climax and ending feel unearned, and left me with more questions than answers. The game laid a good foundation. It made me care about those answers, even if I didn't receive them. But once again, the elements were there, but not put together with much skill. The most problematic thing about the Order is its gameplay, and at many times lack thereof. The beautiful environments often force me to experience the game through all the thrill of walking down hallways. There's a lot of walking in this game. The gameplay loop can be broken down into shoot people, pick something up, watch a cutscene, walk a bit, repeat. Throughout most of that loop, I felt like an unwelcome visitor. At most, I had direct control of my character for about half of the Order. Ready at Dawn took their marketing to heart far too much. I mainly observed cutscenes and poorly executed QuickTime events that transparently exist so that you won't realize how little of the game involves gameplay. When the gameplay does put you in control, it does a passable job. The shooting works and the experience is mainly smooth, but beyond this, it feels like nothing special. More generic than anything, it's like a third-person version of Call of Duty. Uncreative enemies with similar weapons coming into the room wave after wave. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the same tightly developed controls of the Call of Duty game. The shooting is manageable and at times fun, but it never feels like something special. Despite the setting, most of the weapons are generic pistols, rifles, and shotguns. I got to shoot a gun that stuns people with air and another that ignites enemies in fire from afar. These are satisfying to use at first, but quickly become just another way to kill a large number of enemies who largely line up and politely ask for death. I also got to shoot an electric weapon, which simply kills people when I held R2, rather than giving me a creative toy to play with. Beyond this, the game contains a handful of generic hacking minigames that do little more than break up the pacing further. Really, the game tries to be more cinematic than game. The best gameplay comes from the very few times I got to fight half-breeds. I felt genuinely terrified the first time that I faced 3 of them. They hid in the shadows around an arena that limited my view before dashing out and fiercely running toward me. That easily constituted my favorite part of the game. The game showed me what it could have been in that moment. What could have happened had it tried to be less of a generic shooter, where you take people just from behind cover. However, the game took even this and ran too far with it. Nearly every subsequent half-breed encounter played out the same way in a nearly identical room. This took away the tension as I optimized how to fight them, and by the end, I easily dispatched them without taking any damage. Overall, The Order is a passable game. The sound and visual design are impeccable, but the rest of the game falls victim to trying to be cinematic. It left me feeling like I had little control, and it wasted the control it gave me by being completely generic. However, the parts The Order did well, it did exceptionally, which is what makes it so frustrating that it couldn't pull it all together. Parts of the game show creativity and great design, but overall, The Order is just pieces of design in search of a game. I give The Order 1886 a solid OK out of 10.